to Slalom Consulting's practical guide to launching your career. Welcome, everybody. We're excited to have you here today. My name is Megan Spalding, and I am the director of the Albers Placement Center. And the Albers Placement Center is the career center for the business school. So for all of you who are business majors or grad students in the business school, we're here to help support you in all things career planning. And we're really excited today to have our special guest here, Brian, to talk about this topic, and definitely a lot of good tips and advice for you today. So you're in for a treat today. And I also just want to recognize this is kind of a co-partnered event today. So my colleague Kiana Higa is here as well from the Career Engagement Office. And then Lucia Nava is here, and she's from Alumni Associations. We kind of all partnered together to put on this event for you today. So thank you both for your partnership on this. And I'm just going to kind of start us off and hand it over to Brian so we really can maximize the hour and you can get all of his best wisdom and tips today. So Brian Ladyman is here with us. He's a managing director in Slalom Consulting, and he leads the Seattle-focused business consulting team. For those of you who don't know, Slalom is a 14,000 person business and technology consulting firm, and they're headquartered here in Seattle. He's also an adjunct professor here at Seattle U, where he teaches strategic brand management in the Albers School. This year, he's taking a year off. Mentor, gosh, I'd have to look back. How many years, Brian? Maybe 6 or 7 now?
I was thinking 5 or 6.
5 or 6, yeah. In our Albers mentor program, we're very fortunate to have him in that program. So he's also a dad of 2 fairly recent college graduates. So all of this is very close to home for him. And then he's the author of a recently published book that he'll talk about today. Here's kind of if you can see my screen, here's the book. It is fabulous. I highly recommend it. And he'll tell you more about that today and how you can get your hands on it. But a lot of the presentation today will be based off of the great tips he has in his book. So Brian, thank you so much for being our guest speaker today, and I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the nice introduction. I appreciate it. And thanks for coming. I understand it's midterm, so smart of you to invest an hour in your career and step away from studying, everyone. Whoops. You can see my slides, right? Yeah, so as Megan said, I have 2 recent college graduates. My son, UCLA 2018. My daughter just graduated from WSU this last year. So I went through that experience of them. They both switched majors during their experience at college. I also recruit early. I'm part of the early recruiting out of colleges for people joining Slalom. So I've seen sort of the amazingly prepared candidates and the not so amazingly prepared candidates. I've mentored, as Megan said, probably 15 or 18 graduate students who still don't always have it nailed of how to land a job. One of the mentees I got, she's like, I have applied for 60 jobs and I haven't heard back from any of them. And we talked about how her networking was going, which is one of the topics we'll talk about today. And she's like, I haven't done any networking. I just go online at night and I hit the apply button, which is not how you get jobs. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So all that led me to wake up and decide, hey, I have an idea for a book that I think would be helpful, and just time a bit more detail. It's set up so if you're a freshman, this is what you should do your freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, senior year. So sort of paced out in a realistic way of like what you can think about each year. So I'll dive into a couple of the topics today. I'll spend three minutes or less on Slalom, just because I am here both as an author, but also a leader in our Seattle office. So I'll just give a little bit more context on who Slalom is and what we do. Have 2 discussion questions. So you'll have to go off mute and speak to me, which would be great. And then I'll talk about the framework. It's not a cookbook. The pie is an analogy. So we'll talk through the ingredients I think of for a well-baked job candidate, and then we'll drill down into a couple topics that I hope are helpful. Feel free to chime in. I think it's more fun if there's some questions as I go, so I don't have to listen to myself the whole time. I will have plenty of time for questions at the end as well. So Slalom, our goal, our purpose is to help organizations move faster, dream bigger, and build better tomorrows for all. The all being their employees, their customers, and they're really focusing on, and sorry, the top of their vision. We want to make a world where everybody loves their job and their life, and we focus on having our people love their work. So the way that comes to life, we put people first. We're very focused on making sure our employees are growing, they're liking the work that they do, and have strong career paths. And then you can see some of the types of work we do, but both business consulting and technology. So we work with AWS, Microsoft, Google Cloud, Salesforce, all the major technology partners, and really figuring out how our clients bring those to life. And the other difference for us, if you're looking into consulting at all, the other difference for Slalom, we focus on the companies in a given market. So these are all the places where we have offices, and I'm in the Seattle office, so I don't fly around. Like I work on, and our team works on companies located here in Seattle, which is a big difference from other consulting firms where you may live in Seattle and work on something in Florida and fly there every Monday and fly back every Thursday. So it's changed a little bit with the post-COVID world, but at some point, I think a lot more flying will return for everybody. Oh, and somebody asked me once what a build center is. Those are just development centers. So it's really focused on developer hubs for that versus full strategic business consulting. All right, so here's the interactive part of our session. What do you think makes for an awesome job and or company?
Do you want people to raise their hand or unmute themselves?
Not raise your hands because I can't see you, but just jump in, chime in. And if it's in the chat, if somebody can read it to me because I can't see the chat.
So we've got the people. I would say opportunity for thrive. Yeah,
Yep.
an incredible collaborative culture.
Culture, super important.
What else is important to you all? Yeah. Oh, Joe, go ahead.
After you get past you're getting comfortable within the company, some level of autonomy and trust between teammates.
Okay.
Yep. Autonomy, trust.
Meaningful work, work-life balance, personal, professional growth.
All that. Yes. Love that. All right. So now the big question is, what do you think recruiters and hiring managers at those types of companies are looking for when they talk to college seniors and are comparing candidates?
Looking for someone with new ideas.
Someone with new ideas, is that what I heard?
Yes.
Hi, Isabella just left.
Sorry, I was on the phone earlier.
Brian, let's see. Self-motivated, driven professionals, candidates who align with the company culture, people who know how to sell themselves, work experience, well-rounded candidates.
Yes, I love all these answers. These
People
are all
that are good at communicating.
good. Communication is so key.
Ability to learn quickly.
Yes. And the thing that's critical on all that stuff, that's the list of stuff, is being able to represent those qualities in the job interview. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the end of our time together. All right, just a couple slides before I dig into the book. I thought this was some interesting stats to just be aware of. Roughly 20% of Americans are underemployed, meaning they are working in a job either not full-time or a job that they're not earning what they should be for the level of education they have. And so if you think about the working world, there's that 20%, and then there's people who have jobs where they're the correct pay they should be, but they don't like it. And there's just only so many. I'll just keep talking.
Okay. I'll let you know.
A general vibrancy, the enthusiasm, passion, drive, and those are, I think, some attributes we'll talk about how those show up in a job interview. The ability to hold a solid conversation with eye contact, confidence, maturity. I think that is an undervalued thing to grow during college. So we'll talk about that. And then being a really good storyteller to represent the experience you have in a way that the recruiter or hiring manager cares about. So we'll talk about those things. You can tell, and just holler if you can't hear me. So the student is the pie. It's just an analogy of being really well balanced coming out of college. And these are 7 areas, and I'll talk about the ones that the book digs into. But your mind is all the stuff you're learning in your classes, like your knowledge of different domains. Body, I think for me, how that shows up is just a general vibrancy. So I'm thinking about like, how do you get engaged in stuff that gives you a sense of vibrancy for job interviews. Spirit, I think college is a great time to just figure out your place in the universe and think about those things, not necessarily religious, but just getting a bit more spiritual than you might have been earlier. Fun is super important. I have had some mentees who are super academic, but they're not having fun and they're not growing that well-rounded skill base of social skills and things like that. So I've had to work extra hard with a couple mentees on that. And then the 3 that the book focuses on are heart, social, and career. Heart, we're going to talk about in just a minute about figuring out your major and the major and what jobs align to that major. And is that something you're passionate about? So we'll talk about that. Social skills is all the things. Like there's so much of a job as collaborating, negotiating, listening, all the soft skills. We're going to talk about that. And then career, just some very tactical things you can do throughout your 4 years to be most prepared to have those interviews. And Megan, I can see you and seems like you can still hear me. So
Yeah, you're good, Brian.
keep rolling. All right, so
Yeah.
let's talk. So in the book, this is one of the key themes for freshman year: be obsessively curious about majors. 75% of students at all colleges switch majors more than once. Find a switch, but the sooner you figure out the thing that's right for you, the better you can like grow the skills in that area and get excited about it and switch to being excited about the major versus still in that phase of like, I think this is an okay major, I'm not really sure. So, and those majors go to your first job. I would say majors are less important as you get on in your career. Like I have no idea of the majors of anybody that I work with, but people coming in, or if you're applying for marketing jobs, if you're not a marketing major, you don't have the lingo, you don't have the talk, it's much harder. So figuring out what is that first job you're going to go for out of college, and then making sure your major lines up to that. Another key point is an interest doesn't have to be your major. So I'll use my daughter for just a moment. She was a Crim J major when she started. And I said, do you want to be a police person? No. Do you want to be a lawyer? No. What do you want to be? I don't know. Why are you asking me this? Because you picked Crim J as your major. And I'm wondering why. Anyway, over time, she did switch over to communications major.
Oh no. Sorry, everybody. Clearly, the internet world doesn't want to work today. Let's see if we get Brian back here. Just hang on for a second with us. Hey, team, can you pause recording?
Yeah, I think so. Let me try that.
Thanks, Justin. I was worried that was going to happen. Sorry, everybody. Let me email Brian.
Thanks for letting me back in.
I don't know. It was we all had to discuss, and it was a hard decision.
All right, I can see you now, so that's great.
Cool.
All right, so here's some questions. I would encourage, if you are and haven't quite nailed your major yet or aren't sure, what do you learn about in that major? What are typical first jobs? What do you do all day? The thing I think people don't think about is a job you do for 8 to 10 hours a day. So figuring out what exactly that job entails, I think architecture sounds really cool. Like, oh man, you make cool buildings. I heard recently somebody thought that was a great job, but then they watched somebody do it for a day, they shadowed, and they're like, what they actually did all day was not interesting to the person. So I think, and we'll talk about shadowing somebody in just a second, But I think the other ones at the bottom, what are some good companies for that type of job to start be thinking about where those companies are geographically, and if you want to live anywhere or do you want to go to technology hubs, things like that are pretty important. Like you can be a dentist in any city in the country, but if you're a high-tech developer, you're probably prone to specific cities and things like that. So, and I'm going to pause to take a question if anybody has any questions on this topic.
I have a question. Hear me?
We can.
All right. Whenever I ask people what they do for their job, like day to day, I usually get a really vague answer. Like they don't even know really. Is there a good way that you suggest to kind of get the information of what day to day information is like in a given career?
My gut is to just keep being curious and keep asking, what does that mean? What do you mean? How many emails do you get a day? What are the emails about? Like, I think just digging in would be my answer, but shadow would be the other answer. If you can be like, hey, could I shadow you for 4 hours and just learn about it? Because I'm really interested in that as a potential job for myself, but I don't totally understand what you do all day. If you can get opportunities for that, I would highly encourage that.
Thank you.
I had a question, maybe on behalf of my little sister who still hasn't chosen major. I'm a senior now, but she has a problem where she, got an A in every class, super smart, is interested in everything, and has almost too many options of what she's curious about. What advice would you give me to give her to narrow that down or focus in?
I think there's quizzes out there to help you online to help you land on that. And Megan can probably speak better to that, but I've seen short forms of that is, what are you interested in? What are your innate talents? And trying to figure out how those align to something. And what are just interests that you can always be interested in, like climate change. I'm super interested. It doesn't mean I have to be an environmental scientist if that's not the thing I want to do 8 to 10 hours a day. I think figuring out what the job is versus what are your interests is a pretty important thing. But Megan, maybe you could talk about some of the
Charlie,
quizzes.
is she a student here?
No, she's a student at U of O.
Okay. Their career center should have, just like Brian's mentioning, some kind of assessment. I mean, we have one called Career Leader, but those are sometimes helpful just to narrow down because it takes stock of your interests and skills and then kind of suggests things that are maybe aligned with that. Or I always say to students, like, can you get creative and double major in a couple things? So you can pursue 2 different things. Ideally, if they're complementary, that works great. But how can you work with your advisor to kind of get creative so you can pursue a couple things?
And,
Thoughts.
and I had no idea what I wanted to be. I was a business major. I then went to business school. I still don't know what I want to be, but business is a nice general one that I think gives you a broad set of skills that you can, if you're not really sure, I think a criminal justice or something very specific is a harder thing to broadly use later. So I also err to communications, business, things like that, if somebody totally can't figure it out while they're in college.
Hey, Brian, there's a question in the chat. Maybe you're gonna talk about it. Tell me if you're gonna talk about this in a little bit. What is the best, how do you reach out to somebody to ask them to shadow them?
Yes, we will talk about that.
Okay, it's coming.
All right, new topic, resume. You'll see at the top, freshman, sophomore year. I encourage get your resume going, figure out what you have, where you have holes, where you want to make sure you can fill in over the course of your 4 years during college. Just reading down the bullets on the left, Etsy, $8 for really cool resume templates. This one that's on the right is from there. It comes with really nice fonts, really nice layout. Don't struggle with a Word document and that may not look awesome. The Etsy ones are really nice, and do not pick one with a picture. There are some with pictures. Second thing is position title. Under the fake name there of Well-Baked Pie, you'll see position title. Be specific. If you're applying for marketing intern role, put marketing intern right there. We get a lot of resumes without that. And then you'll read somebody's history and they're like in retail for a bit, and then they were at Microsoft for 2 years, and there's a developer title, but they're also sales and marketing. And you're like, I don't know what this person is, move on to the next person. So if you can make it really clear at the top, hey, Mark, I've done marketing, I'm looking for a marketing internship, that really helps people screen and stop on your resume than if you don't have that. 2-column versus 1-column. This is a 2-column. My personal advice is I like the 2-column for college because you can fill it in with, like you see, oh, a semester abroad, activities, volunteering. Where if it's 1-column, it might be harder if you don't have that many jobs to make it look as meaty. It's a totally 50-50 thing. Some people like 1-column, some people like 2-column. The main thing is to have white space and have it look like professional. I think that'd be the main point. Like if you have a 1-column one that you think has nice white space and you fill it up with the jobs you have, don't feel obligated to flip it over to a 2-column. And I talked to a bunch of our recruiters to see if there was any preference, and they mainly said no preference. You can customize your highlights, so add stuff to the resume template. If you've done a lot of volunteering or you're involved in a lot of extracurriculars, add that on. Proofread, and then have somebody else proofread. And you're gonna look over the same error time and again if you just proofread it yourself. So pass it to somebody else. PDF, because especially the Etsy ones do have some custom fonts, always PDF. The readers, there was another question from somebody once, well, can they read PDFs, the scanning machines? And they totally can. So I encourage PDF. And then do it early in your college to figure out what is your target of like filling in stuff with internships and jobs on campus, things like that. I will again pause.
Brian, do you know how the ATS or applicant tracking system, how are they with 2 columns? Do you know, did any recruiters at your company say?
They didn't say, but I know
Okay.
we use those systems too, and
Yeah.
they didn't seem fussed about
We've
it.
been kind of coaching students like to have like a pretty resume like you've got here to hand to people or send to people. But if you're maybe applying online, you might want to have more of like a, I don't know, we call them ATS friendly
Gotcha.
resumes. It's scannable a little bit better, but just curious.
Any other questions on resumes? All right. So the other one is gain experience. And this is sophomore year in the book. I think if you have to work your freshman year, work your freshman year. If you can take the freshman year to not work and just get your feet and like absorb all the newness of college, I think that's great. But even if you don't need to work, I encourage getting an on-campus job. I think it's going to grow your social skills. Whatever you're doing, you're going to get more targeted and like, I don't like this. I do not like checking people out at the school store, or my gosh, this is fun. I love interacting with the public. This is the greatest job I've ever had. And any of that learning you can have during college about your likes and dislikes, super important. Plus you'll get extra cash, which is great. I encourage trying to get an internship mainly after your sophomore year and after your junior year, or before your junior and before your senior. I encourage going pretty hard to get it after sophomore year, but don't stress out if you don't, but really, really try to get one between your junior and senior year, because that is going to give you nice meaty stuff to talk about in your interviews for your full-time job. And if it goes well, you'll also have an offer going into your senior year that you don't necessarily have to do all the recruiting stuff, because you have an offer in the bag from a company you've experienced and hopefully liked. So, and there's some guidance in there about just how to time box that, so it's not overwhelming and you're not thinking every day about how am I going to get an internship, how am I going to get an internship, but like figure out how to time box it and work hard at it and see what happens. And then the shadow a target job, we're going to talk about networking in just a minute, but I think the example there was find an alumni of Seattle U on LinkedIn who has the job and say, hey, I'm a whatever major. I'm thinking about being an architect. Is there any way I could have coffee with you, or maybe shadow you for a couple hours, or probably do the coffee first, and then after the coffee, be like, hey, could I spend a few more hours with you? This was an amazing educational experience for me, but I'd love to visit you in your office and have some firsthand experience. I think that you got to build the relationship a little bit. Anybody have an example of an on-campus job and learning something you either hate or love from that experience? No, just okay jobs, kind of like it, kind of don't like it.
I ran social media for something on campus, and I realized, although I like marketing, I definitely don't want to be in social media.
There you go. Perfect. Honestly, ticking stuff off that you don't like is just as important to figure out as stuff you do like. So cool. Also, I think there's things you think, oh, social media, that sounds cool. And then when you do it, you figure out what that actually means on a day-to-day basis. And some people still think it's cool. And then for you, you're like, nope, not cool, not my thing. Love that. All right, so we're going to talk about networking now. Why do you do networking? The main goal is to get a job. Honestly, networking is, if you don't get it in on-campus recruiting, which I think is the #1 place to get a job, because they're there looking for Seattle University students. They've set up special time. The people who are interviewing you are probably Seattle University alums who are excited to bring in people. So that's the #1 thing. I would say use your Career Center resources. But networking and getting that skill is super key. Applying online cold is the worst strategy. I'd say it's more like gambling. They hope somebody scans your resume and calls on you. But I think without all that years of experience, the chances are lower for that. So we're going to talk about networking. Ultimate goal, to build a relationship with somebody who connects you or helps you get a job. But the pretenses of why you're reaching out to somebody, hey, I want to learn about this industry, I'm thinking about it. Would you be willing to spend time with me? I want to learn about your company. I want to learn about this position I saw open. If you have any more details, I'd like to learn about that. Advice on classes or majors, and then possibility of internship. And then at times, hey, I have a big interview next week with so-and-so. I see you're connected on LinkedIn. Would you have time to chat with me about that? I can go in most prepared. And what is networking? It's meeting up for coffee. It's a phone call. It's a virtual call. It's showing up at a networking event. It's basically anytime you're interacting with somebody else, and it really freaks people out. If you're not comfortable with it, it sounds super scary. I got to go talk to this person. I don't even know them. It's going to be awkward. I'll just say it will be awkward the first couple of times you do it. And I would just push past that and know that it'll get easier the more times you do it. So who are you doing this with? Who are you networking? Your parents, other family, your parents' friends that you might have known over the years, previous managers, coworkers, professors that you've built relationships with, club advisors, upperclassmen, high school friends, alumni. Once you're in LinkedIn, just keep going in there every week and clicking on the people that you actually know and keep building that out, because more and more people will come. And then when you're looking for a job, you can, the more people in there, the easier it's going to be to find somebody who is an architect, or I keep using architect. I should come up with a consultant at Slalom Consulting. But that network, the network is what's valuable. So figure out how to just keep growing it and focusing on that. So here's an example of it could be a cold reach out on email. It's a little long for a LinkedIn connection where you can just write the note in the message. But if you had someone's email address, I'll just let you read that rather than read it to you. So a little bit of context on who you are and why you want to talk to them, a little bit of logistics on how you might make that happen, and then gratitude of thank you so much for considering this. I've heard some people say, I do that and not everybody gets back to me. That's the reality of the working world. You're going to get some people that want to help and other people that just blow you off, and don't take that personal. That's part of networking. All right, so let's talk about actually meeting with somebody. Be prepared. So what does that mean? Look them up on LinkedIn, know a little bit about their background. Be early. I say be early because somebody was networking with me once and they showed up 7 minutes late, and it just stuck in my brain. And because they didn't apologize, and I was taking my time out on a Saturday to meet them at Starbucks. Then they showed up 7 minutes late and just started talking to me like they weren't late. And I was like, wait, what's happening? You were late and you're not apologizing to me. Be curious. Look professional. Another one, another right out of college was networking with me, friend of my daughter's, showed up super scruffy. And had I been impressed with him, like scruffy, like super dirty glasses, hair was kind of like he just got up and wanted to talk to me specifically about like careers and jobs and get advice and stuff. And had he showed up polished and had a great conversation with me, I would have helped him more. But because of how he showed up, I helped him only so much. I gave him helpful advice, but I didn't take it on me to like introduce him to some people or get him introduced into slalom, because he didn't show up in an impressive way. And then the final thing is always follow up. Like, even if you say thank you at the end of, hey, thank you so much, I really appreciate it, send another follow-up note that reinforces anything you talked about and re-express the appreciation that the person took the time to meet with you. I will pause again because this is a big topic and I think it scares some people. And I made it sound so easy, but what are you, who's done it successfully? Who's done it and had a conversation that didn't go well?
Yeah, I've definitely tried to do some networking in the past and had some successes, but sometimes I'll get to the meeting, and even though the person was willing to come for the meeting, and I feel like I've done everything right, they're very like standoffish almost, like they don't want to answer their questions. Like it's not like probably that common, but sometimes it can happen where people are just kind of they're taking time out of their day, but it's like they really didn't want to. So it's a little confusing why they did, but for the most part, I've been able to get like a lot of good information, and the people always follow up and usually want to like talk to me again.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really like it's definitely the best way to get to know more about a profession.
Cool. Yeah, I can't speak to the standoffish people. They're out there. Anyone else?
I just had a question about, I think like I've done it before and I've gotten coffee with people, and I've also gotten like really good information and like really great advice out of it, but I sometimes am confused how people do networking and like get job offers out of it, or get like, how do you get past the like informational stage into like traction into maybe getting a job or whatnot? Because I almost feel a little bad like asking directly about any of that stuff, or like what's the best way to approach that, or is that even really, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say once you've got that initial relationship, give it a little bit of time, and then 2 weeks later say, hey, I saw this posting for an internship at your company. Do you know anything about it and who I might speak to? And that person that's already helped you once, it's probably, oh, let me check, I'll find out. So I think sometimes it gets to actually having an open job request that you can refer to that they can help you with.
And do you have any advice for that at sort of really large companies? Because I know some things open up, but it seems like a bit of a void when somebody works for a big company like that.
Yeah, it is
So it's
hard
hard
at
to
like
bridge.
an Amazon or something, because even the people who already work there have trouble navigating to who has that job posting. I don't have great advice for that. Unless you can find the connection to somebody in the division. Like my son's in devices at Amazon right now. And so I think if you can figure out from their title what division they're in, and if there's a job posting in devices, then you can go to the person in that division. But out of division, it seems like it's really hard for them to figure out. And Megan, chime in anytime you have
Yeah,
thought.
I was just gonna say, Charlie, you could always ask that person how they navigated the massive system. Like, how did it come together for them? What tactics did they do? You could say that. I feel like I've applied here and it's confusing and I don't
Yeah, I
know how
love
to
that.
actually get ahead. How did you do it? I know for a lot of big companies, because their systems are so massive, they have referral programs, and there's incentive. A lot of times the incentives are given to employees to refer people.
And if
You
you
know, if they mention the referral program and they're an alum, see if they'd be willing to kind of refer you.
I love that.
So everybody always wants more people from their alma mater to come work with them. So
Yeah, I love that.
Totally, thank you.
the other thing I was going to throw out to Brian that I always tell students is like, pull this, because I think people are really sensitive to that and empathetic. So I'm a student. I don't know what I want to do. I'd love to learn from you, you know, and
Yeah.
I think they're much more likely to say yes to that than maybe somebody already out in the job market sometimes.
Yep. I love that. Next topic is a career fair, which is the exact same thing. Be prepared, be early, be curious. So a couple specific advices on career fairs, especially the in-person ones. Figure out the day before or a couple days before, what are the 3 or 4 companies you really want to talk to? Do some, go on Glassdoor and read about the company, visit their website, and then get there right when it opens and go to 3 other companies that are not those and just get warmed up talking to people and maybe learn about some new companies. Don't feel the need to be fully prepared for those random ones, but warm up with those and then go to the 3 or 4 that are your target ones. But on all of it, go early because the ones that are your 3 or 4 might be the same as other people's and the lines get long. And I don't know if you've been to one of these yet, but yeah, there'll just be a line of people and you'll all stand there in your suits holding your resumes. And the earlier you are, the fresher the recruiters are because it's a long day for them too. So I think if you can show up and be energizing to them in the morning, that to me is a good strategy for career fairs. And Megan, you've probably seen your actual career fair, so I don't know how that resonates for you.
Yeah, we just had it, Brian, about 2 weeks ago. Great turnout. I think people were excited to be back in person, which was
Cool.
great. I think this the thing that I hear from students a lot is they don't know what to do afterwards. Like, had a great conversation. Now what?
Yeah, I would say,
or that it's even okay to ask the recruiters for their contact information to follow up. I mean, I talked to a student the other day who had all these great conversations and then didn't know
yeah,
their names, didn't have their email, like didn't ask for
Okay.
that at the fair. Does that make sense?
it does make sense, and you should ask and talk about something memorable. So when you follow up, you can be, hey, we talked about my job at doing blankety blank and why, like recap for them because they will have talked to a ton of people. Anything you can do to trigger, they still might not remember you because they would have talked to 50 people that day. But that little refreshing them on the conversation, they'll probably follow up with you more than if you just said, hey, thanks, it was great to meet you. Like be as specific as you can about why you want to keep the conversation going. All right, last topic of like the drill down out of the book. There's a bunch more and I'll just hit those real quick at the end, but learn to tell pithy and compelling stories. People remember stories, and the ones who answer our interview questions, and we'll talk about what type of questions those are, with just a tight story where you can actually envision it and see what they did and the impact that their actions took. Those are what impress us as interviewers when we're talking to people. So consider your audience. What's in it for them when you're telling your story? Like, how do you translate the job you had serving burgers to the marketing internship you're applying for, and try to figure out how you put a twist on the story that is compelling for whatever you're applying for. Compelling headline is like, what's the summary message you're trying to get across? I'm really good at problem solving. I'm very collaborative on teams. I'm a constant learner. What is that key point you're trying to get across? And then each answer should have a start, a middle, and an end. And the start's usually just a little bit of context on the situation. Here's what I did based on that situation, and here's the positive outcome that happened. It's a pretty standard format. People go really long with the start. And like, I was on this team and there was 4 of us, and well, one of them joined late, and then we had this dynamic that wasn't working, and because this one person, like, you've lost me. Like, keep it tight, figure out how to tell your story. I was on a team, there was 4 of us, and we were having friction between 2 of us because we had different thoughts on this thing. Like, figure out how to like get it down to 1 sentence or 2 sentences, and then talk about what you did. So what I did, I set up a special time where we then got together to talk about the dynamics of the team, and we did a trust action, like whatever that is, but make it clear what your action was in the situation that helped resolve whatever you're talking about. Right size the detail to bring it to life, which is that the length of the story. Figure out how to answer succinctly, because that's part of being a good communicator, but succinctly, but enough that we can envision what the situation was and why it was difficult, or what great opportunity you created out of it. And now the last bullet, tell your story with energy. I'd like you to think for a moment about your most boring college professor. And no matter how good the school is, I know you all have had a very boring college professor. Everybody has. It's a given. Got that person in mind? Okay, now think about your favorite college professor. When you're excited to go to class because it's going to be fun and you're going to be energized and it's going to be interesting. That same spectrum shows up in a job interview for us as interviewers. We're just like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a long half an hour. The people who come in and are enthusiastic about their story and have a bit of energy, that's going to make it land better, and it's going to feel like a more some of those traits you talked about at the beginning: driven, good communicator. So think about how do you bring energy to your story, and then practice your go-to stories. There's probably a couple stories that you have that will show you're a good communicator or a good collaborator or problem solving. There's common things that interviewers are looking for. Those are some of them, but you could have a story that you use for multiple angles to show some of that coming to life. So, but then practice them like with your friends or somebody in a mock interview setting to figure out how to make them tight and compelling and get feedback on them. I'll pause again actually, I'll do one more slide and then I'll pause. So here's examples. Tell me about a time. We always ask, tell me about a time. And when we do that, we don't want somebody to say, I'm really collaborative. I think it's important to be collaborative. We want you to tell us about a time that you found somebody to like answer the question we're asking. Some people talk in platitudes about, I'm a good problem solver. If we say, tell us about a time where you struggled with something at work and how you resolved it. Tell us a story that illustrates problem solving. Don't say, I'm a good problem solver. So these are just some examples, but Google behavioral interview questions, and there's all kinds of lists. And I would say most companies are using some form of situational behavioral questions. Now I'll pause. Any questions on just interviewing and how to answer questions and storytell?
Hi, can I say something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I have finished my master's degree. Still, I panic at some point at the job interview. I prepare myself, and most of the time I study well for the interview and I expect the questions. But all of a sudden in the interview itself, I get panicked sometimes. And the last interview, like after I finished the interview, I felt really bad because it was really simple. But I was so nervous and I can't get rid of that. Yeah. And I'm not young. I mean, I'm not fresh graduate.
Yeah, we all get nervous. So first of all, there's that. But I think increasingly, and especially I would say at the awesome companies that we talked about at the beginning, I think be honest, say, I'm really excited about this job. I'm a little nervous, or, even when answering a question, acknowledging that you're a human and you're nervous. I think that's okay. I feel like it would disarm the person and give you a bit more latitude to not be as nervous, basically. But any other advice that people have, that's just my take, is to acknowledge, first of all, everybody gets nervous. It's just a matter of some people hide it better than others.
If thoughts? I could say something, sorry.
Yeah, please.
Something that helps me, because I struggle with the same things, is just like really humanizing them. Like they're just people too. Like they were kids once, they were not interviewing people once, they were probably in your position. So just like realizing that and reminding yourself of that when you're there, I think can relieve some of the stress and anxiety too.
Love it.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that too, I think the more you can think of it, or think of it less as an interview, if that's possible, and more of you're there to have a conversation with somebody around a mutually interesting topic. So you're talking about marketing, you're talking about business, you're talking about the company. So trying to think of it more of just having kind of like a structured conversation, maybe with a friend about a topic. I found that, at least for me, when I go into interviews, to be a little more helpful.
And also that you're interviewing them too, right? So like, you're not sure you want to be here. It's not like a test you might fail or you might achieve. It's a two-way kind of experience. Are you both like the right fit for each other, right? So
I like it. All right, so those were the drill down topics I pulled out to cover today. Other things in the book are listed. I would say some advice on how to set up your LinkedIn and your handshake. A little bit more advice on career fairs. There's a section, actually it's a assignment from the class I teach of how to think about your brand and how you're different from other candidates so that you can communicate that during interviews in a compelling way. Because I think thinking about yourself as a brand and how do you build your brand when you land at a company and represent your brand in an interview is an important topic. And yeah, and there's a little bit on there, appreciatively negotiating your offer. I think straight out of college, there's not a ton of negotiation room, and it can be a bit of a turnoff. Like, wait, you're just out of college. Why are you negotiating? But I do think there's a way you can do it in an appreciative way where it's worth a shot to see if you can up your offer a little bit. And last slide before just open questions. The main point is my email down there. If you buy my book and have some success, or even from success from some of the stuff we talked about today, I would love to hear about it because I've never been an author before. So it's fun to hear that what you write about is helping somebody. So I again, would love any feedback. With that, I'm going to unshare my screen and see if we have any other questions. And happy to talk about whatever, consulting, any of the topics we covered, other topics.
Are you going to, there is any chance you are going to teach us the branding management class this year?
There isn't.
Yeah.
I'm not. I struggled with it, and then I even got an offer to like teach half of it and co-teach it with somebody. But my mom's 86 and she's in a memory care place, and I've got some extra responsibilities right now, so I decided to say no this year.
Okay, hope she's gonna be better.
Thank you, I appreciate it. But it was really hard. I almost said yes.
Yeah, because I was chatting with Dr. Isaac, and he said, "We almost there."
Oh, yeah, he was almost there, but then I said no.
So I know we talked about this a little bit already, but can we just do a quick run over on once you set up like a meeting with like an informational interview kind of thing for networking, once you've had a good interview with them or had a good talk with them, how can you follow up on that and turn it into more than just a talk, like turn it into a job offer?
Yeah. I mean, one is I really enjoyed our conversation. I loved what I heard about your company. What advice you have to actually land a job there? I think be real direct. Or back to the thing we talked about, of like I saw this posting. How do you propose I get engaged to apply for this job? If you've had a talk, they're going to help you, I would think. At that point, I think the blow off is the first request to reach somebody. But once you've met with somebody, if the conversation goes well and you showed up professional, like I suggested, I think they'll be inclined to figure out, oh, how do I get you over to this person?
Can I add in, Brian? Another one, Giancarlo, you feel like just the like, oh, they're not asking for my resume. They're not offering to refer. Like another tactic is, do you know anybody else in your department or at the company you think that I should talk to, or maybe it would be helpful for me to connect with? So the ask or the next step is just more networking, more connections. That can be helpful too. Because maybe they feel like, gosh, I just graduated. I'm an alum 3 years out. I can't do much. But yeah, actually, let me see if I can connect you to my manager.
Yeah, I love
that.
that.
Might be helpful to you, you know? So that could be another like action-oriented thing to ask next, if that helps.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, in closing, good luck in midterms. And again, thanks for.
I have one question.
Joining. Oh, yeah, go for it.
Question.
Yeah, like if you miss some meeting or some appointment, how do you approach the guys still?
Say that again. Like you set up a networking and then didn't show
You
up.
missed it, or yeah, some appointment or something. Yeah, then what do you do?
Yeah,
Like,
that's a tough.
how do you
I mean,
approach that one?
You just have to apologize profusely and hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, like, how do you if you don't have the contact details like number or something, then I mean, even what do you mean by profusely apologizing? If you can.
Just say whatever communication channel you have with that person, whether it's LinkedIn or their email or their text, just profusely meaning, I am so sorry this happened. And the truth can be, I totally forgot about our meeting. Like, what, you don't need to make up something like I was in a car accident, but just be very, I'm so sorry. If you're still open to it, I would love to meet, and this will not ever happen again. And I assure you I will be there, or just let it go.
True.
Brian, we have one more question.
All right.
And I didn't set this up ahead of time. I'm just going to be impulsive because I just thought of it at the end. So don't leave anybody yet, or before you do, make sure you got your full name listed on your Zoom, because I want to give out a couple books. I think that would be
nice.
fun. So Albers Placement Center, we're going to give out 2 books. So make sure your full name is on your Zoom, and we'll run the list afterwards, and we'll randomly pick it, and we'll email you and get Brian's book for you. So I didn't want you to leave before I said that. So, but Annabelle has a question to add, if you're okay, Brian.
Yeah.
Hi. So yeah, I was waiting for my meeting with Megan the other day, and I actually picked this up before I even knew that this was going on. And I just want to say that I loved it, and it was really helpful for me as a junior transferring. There's a lot you feel like you need to catch up on. So it gave me a lot of relief as to like where I'm at and all of that. So I just want to say thank you for that. But my question was, with networking, especially at career events, it's obviously hard to kind of stand out or like make them recognize you for other than just a student, and like they have a million resumes, right? So I'm just curious on if you have any tips on like standing out at those events / how can you deepen conversations other than just like, oh, I'm a student, this is what I'm doing, when you're meeting up with people for coffee and things like that?
I love that question. So on the career fair one, you can stand out. Honestly, I've been at them at other schools, not at Seattle U, and the people who are vibrant and engaging and talk at a maturity level that's higher than some of the other students, you remember those. Like recruiters in any of those like consulting firms who are we talk like, you talk at the end of the day and like, who'd you like? Oh, who'd you beat? And we keep a list of like, these are the ones we want to follow up with, and the others kind of just disappeared. But yeah, people stand out by just showing up and being, I would say, be curious and enthusiastic. Those are 2 words I really like. Of how long have you been there? Ask people about their job and get in that conversation, and just keep drilling down with curiosity. Like, what was your first project? What did you do? What did you like? What is your next career step? How do you learn? Like all that, just if you can just keep being curious and thinking about yourself in that company, that helps drive some of the curiosity of like what you might ask about. You'll stand out for sure.
Thank you.
Because there are a lot that are really awkward, and like a sweaty handshake, and the person doesn't make eye contact and talk to you. Like there's a lot of that. So when people show up really polished, it definitely is sticks out.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. I hope, Brian, thank you especially. This is such great advice. And I think it's also so helpful to hear it from, a hiring manager and somebody who's been a long time in their career. I just think it hits home more so than coming from all of us who they see all the time. So thank you for doing this for us today. So appreciative. Before you guys go, I just wanted to let you know about something we have going on next week. Brian talked a lot about, practicing interviewing. The more you practice, you get better, being able to tell your story. We are doing mock interviews next Thursday, November 3rd. This is for Albers students. It's a low-key, low-risk way to practice interviews with employers. So we'll have some recruiters and employers there that you can practice with. I think grad is full, but we have a waiting list, right, Justin? But undergrad still has some spots. And so you can just go into Handshake and search mock interviews. And if you're an undergrad, we've got some spots open for you. And then Justin just linked to it in the chat. So thanks, Justin. So
Yeah, those are great. Take advantage of them.
Yeah. Kiana, anything you guys got going on that you want to promote?
We will also be doing mock interviews later on in the year, but we are always open to do interview prep and mock interviewing as a one-on-one. Yeah, come see us too.
So yeah, as you all know, both career centers are always available to you to help kind of follow up to some of the things that Brian talked about today. We can help coach you or work on that resume or help you with how to ask an alumni, you know, for an informational interview, those kinds of things. Happy to support you on that. So thank you again so much, Brian. And we'll do a drawing. We'll email you if you win a book. And we're so grateful that you all attended. Hope it was helpful for you. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye all.
Thank you.